So let's go ahead and look at identifying devices. So the best way to list anything Linux is to remember the following ls command. So ls is a very good command to list a lot of things, not only just files, as well as other things. So first at ls is to list the files in the file system. We've seen this used many times. There's also ls block, which lists the block devices, which are going to be your hard drives. ls PCI, which is going to list the PCI devices. Okay. ls USB, which will list USB devices. ls dev, which is going to list all devices. And mount to see mounted disks. So let's go ahead and look at those real quick. Let me fire up my machine here. You guys can go ahead and follow along with me. Give me 1 second, just start my machine up. Alright, let's go ahead and get logged in. Let's get our command line going. Alright, so we're going to do that first one, which is ls block. ls block is nice because it actually not only shows you your different hard disks, but it also shows you what partitions are on them. Okay, so that's really nice. Another way you can see your different partitions is df-h. But you'll notice that it doesn't actually show you any of the partitions. Or I'm sorry, not a df-h, it would be fdisk-l, I believe. No. Yep, wants me to do that. Okay, so just ignore that for right now. So we can just do ls block. Oops, lsblk. There we go, ls block, and I'll show you all your different partitions. So that just stands for list block devices, okay? The other one was ls PCI, so list PCI. So it's going to show you all your different PCI devices there, which are going to be like your peripheral devices, such as mouse and keyboard and things like that. Alright, let me go ahead and clear my screen. So let's do ls USB. And you see there I don't really have much plugged in because I don't have many things plugged into my computer right now. I do have a wireless mouse plugged in. ls dev was our next one. So list dev devices. So it's actually not finding that command, so maybe a package we're missing. And then we do mount to show all of our mounted devices. Okay, so this can look like a lot of gibberish, guys. So this command is best used with grep if you're trying to find a specific mounted drive or file system. Okay. Or an easier way to do that is the command I did earlier, which was df-h. Okay, and you'll see here, it'll show your file systems and what it's mounted on. Let's head back to our PowerPoint. So you get our next slide here. So like for everything, there are plenty of commands to check information about the hardware of your Linux system. Some commands report only specific hardware components like CPU or memory, while the rest cover multiple hardware units. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the most commonly used to check information and configuration details about various hardware peripherals and devices. The list includes ls CPU, HW info, ls HW, DMI decode, ls PCI, and others. So let's look at our first one here, which is going to be the ls PCI command. This will show the device ID of your network card or any other PCI device. Depending on your system, you may be able to run this command without having to be root first. So we're going to try it, and we're also going to add the flags NVV on it. So let's try it again. ls PCI. So list all our PCI devices there. Let me clear my screen. We're going to run it again. So this time we're going to do it with the NVV command. Actually, let's do it just with that, and then let's do it again with the flag so you can see the difference. So you see it gives you a lot more info on it when we do it that way. It's giving you a lot of more details on it. So that's usually what flags do on commands, is they alter what the command shows and gives you more info. Okay, let's clear our screen. So when we do the NVV command, this will display LSPCI output in verbose mode with numbers without performing a lookup in the device ID list. So V stands for verbose. If you add a second V on it, it's going to give you even more options. You can actually add a third V on there to give you as much info as possible. Let's look at our next one, which is going to be LSCPU, which reports info about the CPU and processing units. This one doesn't actually have any flags on it that we can use. So we're just going to do a LSCPU, so list CPU. And you'll see here it's going to list all of our CPUs, as well as some info about it. Oops. There we go, right there. So it's telling you we got an 86 by 64 architecture on the CPU. Okay. It has 32 and 64-bit modes. We only have one CPU. There's one thread per core, one core per socket, and one socket. Okay. Tells you who the vendor is. Model name. So it's an i7 core processor in my laptop here, as well as some other info. Okay, let me go ahead and clear my screen. Let's head back to our PowerPoint. We also have LSHW, or list hardware, which is a general purpose utility. It reports detailed and brief information about multiple different hardware units such as CPUs, memory, disk, USB controllers, network adapters, and more. So LS hardware extracts the information from different /proc files. So let's run that one real quick. LSHW, list hardware. And we're going to get a ton of info. Okay. Again, all these commands are best used with grep, because typically if you're going to be using these commands as a sysadmin, you're looking for very specific info, and you already know what that info is. You just need to see what the associated number is. So maybe I'm looking for, what kind of CPU is this? So I'm going to type in, LSCPU pipe grep model, and it will just tell me the model of the CPU. So typically that's how you're going to be using these commands. Let's look at our next command here, which is going to be hardware info, which is another general purpose hardware probing utility that can report detailed and brief information about multiple different hardware components and more than what LS hardware reports. So let's go ahead and run that real quick. Let's clear my screen. Hardware info. Oh, okay, so this command's also not found, so maybe we're missing a package. So let's move on to our next command, which is going to be LSSCSI. So LSSCSI, pronounced as SCSI, which stands for Small Computer System Interface, lists all the SCSI and SATA devices like hard drives and optical drives. So let's do an LSSCSI on our virtual machine. LSSCSI. And there you go. It's going to list a couple things we have on here. So we have a disk. And we only have one disk, so you only see one here. STA, remember. First disk, only one partition. And we have a CD-ROM. Okay. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Let's look at the next one, which is going to be LSUSB. So LSUSB shows the USB controllers and details about devices connected to them. By default, brief information is printed, but you can use the verbose option to print detailed information about each USB port. Guys, that -V option can actually be used on a lot of things. So feel free to use that with as many commands as you like, just to see if the -V option is available. We just use it without, and then we'll use it with the verbose option. And you see we get a lot more info when we use the verbose option. Okay. Let's move on to our next one here, which is going to be LS block, which we actually looked at earlier, so I won't demo it for you again. But again, this one's listing out all block devices, which are the hard drive partitions and other storage devices like optical drives and flash drives. We have the df command, which I actually showed not too long ago. This reports various partitions, their mount points, and the used and available space on each. So I will demo that one again, just because we are actually, oops. So yeah, you see that here, guys, df. So I'm going to demo that one for you again. So df without the -h option will list everything, but you'll notice it's not in a very human-readable format here, okay? So I always run it with the -h option. And now you'll see it's in much more human-readable terms. It's all in megabytes and gigabytes, okay? So it shows your file system, the size of the file system, how much you're using on that file system, how much is available, and it also breaks it down into a percentage. So you'll see on this file system there's 8 gigs, 4.4 gigs is used. This is how much is available, so about half of it's being used, okay? Let's clear our screen. Go back to our PowerPoint. We're going to look at fdisk. So guys, fdisk is how you actually format your hard drives, okay? So fdisk is a utility to modify partitions on hard drives, and it can be used to list out the partition information as well. So this is how, if I put a new disk on my computer, I want to partition it out. I'm going to run fdisk, the disk name. It's going to actually take me through an interactive way to partition that disk. We're not going to go into that right now. For right now, I just want you to be familiar with that option. There's also gdisk that can be used, and it's similar, except that is setting up GPT partition tables, which will support a lot more partitions. And there's also fparted, which is the original way to do it. However, fparted requires a little bit more intimate knowledge of the disk, because you're actually going to have to know the start and end point of disk sectors and things like that. So fdisk and gdisk are really the best ways to do it. Let's talk about plug-and-play devices. Plug-and-play provides a means of detecting and setting resources for legacy or otherwise unconfigurable devices. The Linux plug-and-play layer provides these services to compatible drivers. So some examples of plug-and-play devices, guys, are computer monitor, external hard drive, gamepad or joystick, keyboard, mouse, USB flash drive, or webcam. So guys, these are things you can just simply put and plug into your computer, and they're going to be available to use just like that, okay? So you don't have to do any setting up or configuring of them. Next, we're going to look at device configuration tools. So connecting your Linux computer to network is pretty straightforward, except when it is not, okay? Meaning, networking is simple, except when it's not simple. So there are two ways networking startup services. There are two network startup services: the venerable network startup and the controversial network manager. So most of the other files in the etc/sysconfig/network-scripts directory are scripts used to start, stop, and perform various network configuration activities. And each configuration file is bound to a specific physical network interface by the MAC address or the interface. So guys, MAC address is short for Media Access Control Address, okay? So this is the worldwide unique hardware address of a single network adapter, okay? So each interface has a MAC address, and this tells us exactly where it was made, okay? Again, we're not going to go too much into these networking setup and startups because as sysadmin, you should need to really know general concepts. Unless you want to be a network administrator, then there's a whole other world out there of network stuff that you can look up and learn about. So in summary, guys, we went over identifying software packages, using RPM to manage software, using yum to manage software, installing and removing software, identifying devices, displaying device and system info, plug-and-play devices, and device configuration tools. Looking forward into our next session, we're going to be going over setting up policy, user file management, managing the Etsy password file, the Etsy shadow file, the Etsy group file, the Etsy G shadow file, adding users, modifying user accounts, deleting user accounts, working with groups, setting up user environments, and finally, login configuration files. Guys, if you're struggling, you're having a little bit of a hard time catching on these concepts, please follow these links for private tutoring sessions for system administrator management. There are weekly and monthly plans. Or if you need some private tutoring sessions for Linux and Bash scripting, go ahead and follow this link here. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I am looking forward to seeing you in session 5